body. We're going to start by removing the sensor there. It's just two screws that need to be removed. With removing the mixing chamber, again, you need a socket set or something that's very fine to remove those Torx screws. And for this whole project, I used an 8mm socket hex head. I didn't even use a Torx fitting because the 8mm hex head was better. To remove the mixing chamber, you need to remove 10 bolts. There's 4 in the top, 2 on the side, and 4 in the bottom. I'm trying to show you with light there the location of those bolts. They're pretty hard to get to. You do need extension bars on your socket set to be able to get to them. You need to be fairly patient and you need to work slowly. Your magnetic pickup tool is really important for this because all those deep bolts, they're really hard to get to, and you don't want to drop them in the engine bay. So I've just removed the top half of the mixing chamber to the intake valve, and I've sort of released it. You can see the black gasket there in the top, which I'm going to replace. But that mixing chamber is usually covered with black soot and carbon deposits again. It all needs to be cleaned. You can see there closer those Torx bolts that need to be removed to release the mixing chamber. You can see the green gasket there will also be replaced. Again, you need to locate the bolts that are at the bottom there to be removed. So you need 10 in total to remove the mixing chamber and the throttle body. You can see me just pulling the mixing chamber out. And again, it's covered in black soot. When you release the mixing chamber from the intake valve, the throttle body it'll automatically come loose. I'm just showing a view of the intake manifold. That's actually pretty clean. I've cleaned it out already before, but if your car hasn't been touched before, this whole area is black and it's just there's so much build up and sludge in there. It needs to be cleaned out. So you can see the throttle body down in the bottom there. It's still connected by one sensor lead. The throttle body is held in place by four bolts, and that sensor wire that you'll need to disconnect. But once you release the throttle body, that'll have to be pulled apart and cleaned again. That looks pretty clean because I've cleaned it before. But if you haven't done this job before, there's just black carbon deposits all the way through that pipe. It needs to be all cleaned out with a brake and parts cleaner or something like that. You can see this is a pretty tight job, and you need to really be patient with this. You can see here I'm just releasing the sealing ring, the sealing O-ring from the mixing chamber intake manifold. I'm going to replace that sealing ring with a new one and just clean up that whole entire area, because all of it is just covered with black diesel sludge. There's the part numbers there for the sealing ring. There's the part numbers there. That's from the EGR valve. There's your mixing chamber. So that green gasket, that green sealing ring will have to be replaced. The whole mixing chamber needs to be cleaned. All of that needs to be cleaned up. That gasket with the red tab needs to be replaced. So there's your throttle body. That's actually pretty clean. It was a lot more dirtier when I removed it the first time. And there you have it. There's the gaskets that go on the mixing chamber and the throttle body sealing with your part numbers. So all that's going to be cleaned up, and then basically we can almost start reassembling again once we've cleaned up all these parts. As you can see, it's a bit of messing around, but it pays off because you'll see just how dirty your intake manifold intake section really can be. Okay, you should have all your parts and things clean now, and I've just shown you a quick little tip here with the transition tube It actually does pull apart, I found out. You've got to wriggle it around a bit, but you can see the whole thing is built up with black diesel sludge. You need to clean that whole thing. There's actually a sealing ring on that. I don't know if you can see it there in the video, but that sealing ring, it's not included with my parts kit that I got, but it might be worth replacing that, so that can be cleaned out and then put back together. I'm just showing you here, I've actually soaked the chambers of the EGR cooler. I'm going to tip it out and show you how much black sludge comes out, so it's just completely covered. You really need a fine brush to get in there and to clean out all those fins, all those fine blades, and all the carbon deposits, because it really is built up. So once everything is clean again, it's time for reassembly. You see I've got a magnetic tool there. It's easy to put the top 3 bolts back in for the EGR cooler. The ones underneath take a lot of time and a lot of patience to get in. You have to go in from underneath. Remember, with the EGR cooler, 10 Newton meters of torque to reassemble those bolts, those 6 bolts. And now I'm just showing you that I've got the EGR cooler reassembled. I've got the cooling hoses reassembled with the new hose clamps, the new stainless steel hose clamps. Hopefully that seals a lot better. I've replaced all the gaskets, I've cleaned everything up, it's looking good, and that should be sealed and good to go once again. I'm just showing you another shot of the engine bay now with the vacuum chamber and the vacuum lines reassembled. The reassembly of this job is basically, the reassembly is the reversal. So it's nothing crazy, there's no special steps or anything. As long as you get the torque settings right with the EGR cooler, you should be okay. Okay, so it's time to start the car. Let's see how she goes. It's going to hesitate. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like it at all, because I've sprayed some stuff into the intake chamber. But it does start, and you give it a few revs. And I've noticed just by cleaning out those few things that it does sound good. All up, I think this job took me about 4 hours, 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours to do. So you do need a bit of time, and that's the first part out of the way. That's just the EGR cooler and those first few gaskets. So stay tuned for the other videos, because we've still got a lot more work to do. You can see I'm just checking over the engine here, making sure I haven't forgotten anything or missed anything. You can see in there, I'm trying to shine the torch. That's where we were, deep down in the engine there. And there's the EGR valve, which is the next part of this assignment. We need to remove the EGR valve, which is, it's even more difficult again. It just gets harder from here on in. It's a really difficult sort of job where you need a lot of patience to get it done. So there you have it.